There are films that I don't expect to enjoy, but actually really do. And then there are films that I don't think will work well for me, and they don't. And unfortunately, The Rocketeer is one of those films. I do have some aspects that I can praise. I didn't completely hate the film, but I didn't think I'd love it because of the narrative, and I have to say I didn't. The only reason I watched this is because I'm trying to watch every Disney feature film, and this was the next on my list. It was released in 1991. It's directed by Joe Johnston, with a screenplay by Danny Belson and Paul DeMeo, and it's based on the graphic novel of the same name by Dave Stevens. Obviously, I've never read the graphic novel. If you have and you have any thoughts on how it compares, please feel free to let me know. And we have a pretty great cast, including Billy Campbell as Cliff. We have Jennifer Connelly as Jenny, Alan Arkin as Peevy, and Timothy Dalton as Neville Sinclair. And I'm actually going to read the one sentence from IMDb that doesn't spoil anything, but it provides a decent overview of what it's about. And this actually does make it sound quite exciting. And this says, a young pilot stumbles onto a prototype jetpack that allows him to become a high-flying masked hero. And that's basically it. Our protagonist, Cliff, finds this jetpack and he is a pilot and he uses it to fly around and become this masked hero, if you like. And as a narrative, I think it works well. It isn't my kind of film, so obviously I haven't seen a tremendous amount of films with a potentially similar premise, so I can't really say how it compares, but judging it purely on its own, the narrative did seem to work. It seemed to flow well. It didn't seem to be too slow at any point, though there were some times when I was kind of bored. I wasn't finding that narrative that interesting, and that's part of the reason why I didn't like it. But I feel like that is more of a me problem than a problem with the narrative. Yes, it might have been a little longer than it needed to. The whole thing is about an hour and 45 minutes. But at the same time, it didn't feel tremendously longer than it needed to. I think there's a lot of substance to the narrative. It's also worth pointing out that this is not set in the 90s. It's set in the 30s, and we have a Nazi angle that I thought was pretty interesting. That part of it I certainly found to be moderately fascinating. Again, still not enough for me to absolutely love it, but there were some bits in this that I thought were okay to my personal tastes. The special effects are okay. I wouldn't say they feel like the 90s, but they're not too bad. And the costumes are pretty great, particularly the costume of the Rocketeer. I thought that looked pretty good, and we have some good music. Actually, the music in this I found to be rather well done, and in general there isn't really anything specific about this that I would say didn't work. I just feel the things that I didn't like about this are largely due to personal preference. I can't pinpoint anything that didn't work well, so if it sounds like your kind of film, then I'd say maybe you'll enjoy it. It does seem to be quite well received online as well. I haven't read any reviews, but I've seen the ratings. For example, on IMDb, it currently has 6.6 out of 10 across 62,000 reviews and ratings, which, needless to say, is not a bad rating overall. So I think if it sounds like your kind of film, I'd say it's probably worth checking out. We have some good performances and some okay bits in the narrative from my perspective. Would I recommend it, though? If you're not generally that bothered about this kind of film, I don't think so. There are, as I said, a few things in this that appealed to me, but in general, there wasn't enough for me to come away from this feeling like I enjoyed the experience. So judging it as objectively as possible, it seems like a pretty okay film, but I would love to know what you think of it. If it appeals to you, did it live up to your expectations? But other than that, I can't say I loved it, but I also can't say it's a bad film. The Rocketeer is quite simply not a film for me.